Welcome to Cultivate the Ordinary podcast, curious conversations for the anxious, frustrated, and bored. I'm Travis.
And I'm Jessie. So often we're held captive by screens, schedules, and media that's mind-numbing and polarizing. This leaves us seeing dimly through a fog. We want to spark more imagination and a better awareness of God's presence in the everyday.
Join us on a fun journey of discovery and curiosity as we look at the ordinary through the lenses of joy, wonder, beauty, and hope. Welcome to another episode. In today's episode, we'll delve further into the relationship between stress, personality traits, and chronic pain. Understanding chronic pain and the mind-body connection. And we often overlook the impact of stress on our bodies and fail to recognize how our coping mechanisms can turn into chronic pain. Mm-hmm. So we were just kind of talking about this before we recorded, but just that, pain is so epidemic. And that's a very ordinary thing that so many people face, but also the way we cope is part of our ordinary everyday. Speaking of everyday ordinary stuff, what's been our ordinary? What do you feel like if you were to say, what's our summer been like? How are things going? What's kind of been happening in our world?
Well, we just got a pool. So it's been a huge thing to get the fence ready and get the pool up. And then for 2 weeks now, the kids have been in the pool basically every single day.
I feel like even getting like a portable pool, above ground pool is like, it's almost a part-time job. Like every day.
Yeah, all the chemicals and pH and testing, making sure kids are not dying. It's a lot supervision
of work.
Thing.
And then, it's a lot of work, but they're having fun.
Yeah. So every day for you, what have been some of the adventures that we've
it's been a fun summer, busy, we're back and forth to the land in Tennessee working on the retreat, and it's kind of probably go there every few weeks, but we had a really wild adventure recently in Asheville that I have not forgotten. So and you were with me.
Tell the story.
You were with me. Well, you can tell the story up till I made the decision to... Well, go ahead. Here we go.
So, yes, we were on our way to Tennessee. Had a deal on a riding mower on the back of our vehicle on the trailer, and stop in Asheville because we had to eat at our favorite Indian buffet, Mela. And we get into downtown and we're like, wait, we can't park anywhere because we have this big trailer. So we found was it Whole Foods?
Whole Foods.
So we were able to take up like 3 spots, like parking the Suburban and the trailer. And we get out all excited to go get Indian buffet, and we hear this hissing, and we're like, what is that sound?
We just couldn't tell what it was. Like
we were gonna leave, but we're like, what is it? Sounds like it's from the neighboring business. Like what?
Cicadas?
We finally got closer to the trailer, and it was one of the wheels. It was losing air.
So we're watching this thing, continue to deflate down
in front of our eyes.
Yeah. And those moments where, this is dumb, but never had a spare for that trailer. And, you're just looking at this going, okay, it's hot. We haven't eaten this. Like, I see where this is going. And so now what? So did a little bit of like trying to figure out, okay, what's the best thing to do here? Well, it's eat. We have to, we're not missing this buffet.
It's 30 minutes till the buffet closes.
It's about to close.
We're going to get our food.
We'll deal with this. But I'm thinking as we're there, I'll be looking up, tire shops, stuff like that. So
I was thinking like immediately, I was like, by the grace of God that we weren't on the interstate when that happened.
Right. That was huge. And, so we're in a safe place and stuff like that. But I don't want to unhook the trailer and drive around, and then you've got this trailer with a lawn tractor on it, and then trying even to back in the parking lot. Anyway, so I'm thinking, what I'm going to do is, if I can get a hold of getting this tire to a shop nearby and seeing if it can be patched, or if we can just replace it on the rim, that's what we'll do. But I'm gonna have to carry this tire or roll it. And so it's like a 14-inch wheel, and they just don't make wheels anymore that size much, so it was hard to even find anything. So I just kind of gambled with, like, maybe at least it's patchable. I did some calling around. So anyway, I made the decision. I'm just gonna it was about 0.7 miles away, and I just start wheeling this wheel, like, and carrying it. It's super hot. It's like 90. We're in downtown Asheville. If you know anything about Asheville, it's a wild place. I love it. It's like Portland. It's like Austin, Texas. It's like super artsy, eclectic. It's one of those cities too that says keep Asheville weird. So there's a vibe there. You're always going to usually have an Asheville story or just crazy weird sightings and things. So I'm rolling this tire, and it's just, as I'm rolling it and then carrying it, I'm feeling like I'm part of, like, a really bizarre documentary. This just feels like it kind of feels surreal, but also feels like I'm part of a weird documentary about a guy rolling a tire. And I don't even know what's going on. I get it. I make the journey with the wheel. Okay, get it. And thankfully, by God's grace, this place says that they actually have one tire like that left still in stock. Couldn't be fixed, but they actually had a replacement tire. So, boom, got that, got fixed, and now I'm headed back to my wheel. And it was, again, a combo of rolling it and then lifting it and carrying it. Rolling it, okay.
Like, you should have, like, a music playing in the background,
yeah,
like, for your
and so
little debacle.
Yeah. So then I get this thought when I get back, and now we're celebrating the journey's over, and and got the tire back on the trailer, and I just had this thought. I'm like, because I had, of course, you have glances, busy day downtown, people walking around and watching me, and never did get any help. No one did offer. No one did offer
jokes.
Me. Yeah. Some guy made where's your stick? Rolling it. But I had this thought when I got back. I was like, I'm pretty sure, like, in Asheville, like 50% of people would have thought, his car broke down or something. He's going to repair his wheel, and the other 50% thought he's walking his pet wheel. Because it's Asheville. But then I'm thinking, no, I think it's more like 30% thought I was fixing a tire, and 70% thought he's walking his pet wheel. So
just also how you look too.
And it might have been, yeah. So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if you want to, have a pet wheel, I think I know what that might be like a little bit. So
yeah.
No.
Start a new trend.
It could really take off. We could start a movement.
Gosh.
Oh man, that dad
okay.
joke game is
so. The purpose of our conversation today has primarily been it's going to be about chronic pain. So in our last episode, we featured Danny Smith, a friend of ours who has an amazing story of healing back pain. He and I both shared our experience of applying principles of pain reprocessing therapy to retrain our brains to not send as many pain signals and begin to heal. So does our pain return sometimes? Yes. But remembering this relationship between the mind and the body is super important for preventing pain and helping it to not become chronic. So I just want to real quick give a disclaimer. Obviously, I'm not a doctor. I'm not giving any medical advice. This episode is really just like a resource. So if people have listened to that last episode with Danny, they heard his story, my story, and you want to know more, this episode is to give more, to give a little bit more of the understanding the mind-body connection and, some of these things like coping mechanisms and how stress plays into pain becoming a chronic pattern. So if you are currently in pain, I recommend that you seek medical attention, and because it could be a more serious acute issue that needs treatment. I'm speaking to the chronic pain sufferer who feels alone in their battle, who has tried everything, who believes they will always suffer. I want to help just kind of give some hope. Help people consider the psycho-emotional aspect to pain, and this podcast is really just for educational purposes alone, and I'm not diagnosing, treating, attempting to cure anything. Just want to invite you to be curious and ask yourself, does this maybe fit for me?
I really feel like I could have used this episode right after the tire incident, but next time. Okay, so you believe in a root cause and integrated approach to most things in life. This topic is no different. So how is a mind-body approach different than what most people know about chronic pain?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. It just, when it comes to a lot of this sort of stuff, there's usually like here's the problem and here's the fix, or here's the symptom and here's the treatment. When you think, I think about neuroscience and, what goes on with people's like thoughts, feelings, and their biology being completely interconnected, because, pain comes from the brain, and it sends signals to the body, but we can also be triggered by overwhelming experiences and emotions that heightens those signals and things like that. So anyway, pain has a massive impact on sufferers physically, emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually. Like, we know that when people struggle for long term, they can become very angry with God. Their spiritual life can suffer. People have to go on long-term disability, that sense of loss of purpose, suffer depression. There's a lot of aspects to this topic. And we are so very grateful for doctors who help cure illness and bring relief for pain, and helping with just other chronic conditions. But when there is not an illness that needs to be healed specifically, or an acute condition to treat, the shift goes to just like symptom management. So patients are often told there's not really a cure for some of these chronic conditions, and that they just kind of have to suffer the rest of their life. Like, that's just what they're told, which can be extremely confusing, infuriating, and kind of hopeless.
Yeah. And you end up probably taking a lot more pills than necessarily you would have to, depending on your situation. Right. Okay, let's talk more about how does stress impact our bodies and contribute to chronic pain?
Yeah. I think most people, it's kind of common sense that, stress and pain could be connected, right? But other than just accepting that that's a reality, sometimes people don't really think past that. Like, what does that really look like? So have you ever noticed that, like, when you're in a stressful time, that the pain could become worse? I don't know. You don't typically suffer from a lot of physical pain, so like maybe not for you, but
yeah. Well, but we've talked before. I battle OCD, and so there's times where, like, I look at that as mental pain. You know, and stress can really induce that. Right.
And so then your mind shifts to obsessive thoughts that repeat. They play on repeat, and that's like a emotional, mental pain.
It is,
you just kind of trapped in that, and you fixate on ways to try to fix it or avoid it, or kind of similar.
The thoughts, right?
Right. Well, science tells us that stress can affect our immune system, blood flow, muscle tension, and even trigger migraines and chronic pain patterns coming from your brain through your nervous system. So as a resilience coach, working with people on a regular basis, just in ordinary life, this comes up a lot. I have dealt with it in my own life, the chronic pain issue, and my own patterns and things that lead to pain becoming a problem. But taking kind of a trauma-informed approach to this type of a topic is really important because our brains are pattern recognition and habit repetition machines. They just are constantly trying to predict what's next and avoid anything unpleasant and seek anything that is desirable.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just always asking these questions. Am I safe or am I unsafe? You know, your brain is trying to sense what to do to protect itself at all times. Like, even when you are in a calm situation, that's still running in the background. Is this okay for me, or is this not okay for me? And so that is not just physically safety settings, but it's also what we perceive as a threat. So it could be just a conflict. It could be and shame. It could be a disappointment or anything like that. So yeah, we're constantly scanning. It's called neuroception. Dan Siegel did a ton of work around this.
And you don't even really,
process.
you're not even aware how much, like, that's like autonomic. Like,
right.
It's just like, it's just happening.
Yes. It's
almost like a security system.
It is pretty much all subconscious until you start paying attention intentionally to whether you feel safe, unsafe, when you're feeling like heightened stress or calming that dysregulation. Like, that's just something once you become aware of it, which we'll talk more about. But yeah, just I would ask listeners just to consider, if you're in pain on a regular basis now, consider how much stressors have an impact on when that pain gets greater or less, and how much are you doing to work on stress management.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. Well, according to research, individuals who experience childhood trauma or have higher ACEs, which are adverse childhood experiences scores, are more likely to develop chronic pain later in life. Studies have shown that there's a significant association between childhood trauma and the risk of chronic pain conditions. It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Troubling. Environmental stress is also linked to chronic pain. Studies have found that individuals who experience high levels of environmental stress, such as living in low-income neighborhoods or being exposed to pollution, are more likely to develop chronic pain. And then there's a strong connection between chronic pain and psychological conditions or disorders. Research indicates that individuals with chronic pain are more likely to experience anxiety, depression, and other mental health issues. It's estimated that about 30 to 50% of chronic pain patients also have comorbid psychological conditions.
Yeah. So this idea that this is all connected, like the mental, emotional, and physical, like it's you often don't have just one without the other.
Yeah. So kind of knowing that, I mean, what are some common personality traits that then contribute to chronic pain also?
Yeah. I mean, this is another area that you and I both are really passionate about, is just understanding temperament and personality, because it's part of our story. It's kind of how we're wired and how we see the world, how we function. And that also can be changed through awareness, or become healthier, I should say. So it's fascinating how certain personality traits can contribute to chronic pain. Traits like perfectionism, people-pleasing, hyper-responsibility, and a need for control can create constant states of stress in our lives and in our bodies. We believe that these being good, quote, characteristics protect us, but in reality they lead to heightened stress and prolonged pain. So this is that parasympathetic state that when you put a lot of pressure on yourself, probably because you just learned to be that way, like kind of type A personality, you're in that parasympathetic state, which is higher levels of cortisol and adrenaline and, heart rate changes. Your body starts to get into like energy conservation mode, and it inhibits your main functions of your body, which then can lead to all these like physical problems.
Well, that sounds a lot like you and a lot of the way that you've related to life and kind of then, experienced a lot of chronic pain in different ways. I mean, talk more about some of that with the ways kind of things have affected you and your pain.
Yeah. I mean, all those personality characteristics, I think I would relate to in some ways. Just kind of growing up feeling like I had to be good, or I had to, even as an adult, it's like the sense of responsibility that I feel, the need to have control or prevent things from going wrong and things like that. People pleasing to a degree. I talked about this a little bit in the last episode, but all that just puts an extreme amount of pressure on myself, and it's constantly looking at what others are wanting from me, rather than looking at what I need or caring for my soul.
Right.
I had years of sciatic pain. I had some foot pain, unexplained joint and muscle pain, low back pain, and more recently, suffered from migraines. And each of these things, when I applied some of these principles of, mind-body syndrome and the understanding how much the emotions and stress had an impact on the level of my pain, and started to kind of retrain those thoughts, all those symptoms went down.
Yeah. And pretty fast even.
Oh yeah. And I think I mentioned this in the last episode too, but it's good to say that highly sensitive people who are, often creative or just caregivers, just people who feel empathetic for others and just feel everything deeply, they tend to be more of your chronic pain sufferers,
Yeah.
High percentage.
Well, how do you think that self-awareness helps in better understanding and managing chronic pain? I know that's something I'm really trying to grow in. I don't feel like I have had a lot of self-awareness,
Yeah. No, you're definitely growing for sure in that understanding why it's so important for any types of suffering. But our bodies and minds are intimately connected, and understanding this connection is key to healing chronic pain. I believe by developing self-awareness and adopting a more integrated approach, we can begin to relieve our pain. It starts with slowly, it's like showing ourselves compassion, being curious about what the pressures are that we feel, like setting realistic expectations. We can learn to show our bodies that we are safe and find power and agency, kind of, and just understanding this mind-body connection.
So for someone that hears, what does it mean to be more self-aware? You explained it there, but in just a real simple
what
self-awareness,
you pay attention to.
What you pay attention to.
Right. I think you can be very aware of all the tasks at your job and all the expectations on you, and you can be incredibly brilliant at so many things and lack so much self-awareness.
Right.
But it's shifting your attention to yourself. Now, within the Christian community, one of the top things that you hear in terms of self-work is no. The self is bad.
Die to self.
We should die to self for sure. The scriptures that talk about that, though, it's the self that is not submitted to God. That it's the part of you that is like the flesh, and the part that's the beloved self, the part that God created, that's the part that needs to come out more.
Yeah.
And that's the part that should be honored. And that is the part that the more you are curious and pay attention to what's really going on inside, you have more to take to God. You have more to hold up and to hold openly and all that stuff. So, self-awareness is not just about looking at yourself. It is about, like in scripture, in the garden, God says, "Where are you?" to Adam and Eve. He says, "Where are you?" He wants to know where we're at right now. He wants to know what's going on, what went wrong. And when we're in stress and chaos and chronic pain, think about that question, like, where are you? And that really gets at that like self-awareness piece.
Well, and if you don't know where you're at or what you're really feeling because you've not given yourself permission to go there, or that it's wrong to focus so much on yourself, how do you know what your need is? How do you, when you bring your needs to God, or how do you feel like you're seeing him show up when, you're pretty dismissive that there's reasons he should?
Yeah, for sure. So, like, have you learned that curiosity and self-compassion and even setting boundaries to a degree, which I know you don't really struggle that much with boundaries.
No.
It's pretty easy for you to say no. But,
well, yeah, I mean, I think you've helped me regularly to just help me think about what do I need. Because that doesn't just come to my mind often. Like, you're really good at that. Like, intuitively what you need all the time. You know what I need too, if you were probably being honest. But like, I don't often know what I need. But even dealing with that question and growing through, like, what do I need in this moment? What do I need today? I need more stillness. I need time out in the woods. I need going to the shop and just working with my hands. But those things are, I guess, ways of to what you're asking there. So what are, I guess, some coping strategies that may hinder our ability to find relief from chronic pain?
So, like, some examples, you mean?
Yeah.
Of just what coping strategies? I mean, coping strategies really just develop as a way to protect ourselves. They will hinder our ability to find relief when we're experiencing chronic pain. But people who tend towards the people pleasing or feel overly responsible for outcomes, it's really crucial for them to prioritize the self-care and boundaries. Similarly, for those who have learned to control everything or protect themselves, these are all these coping mechanisms, right?
Right.
Being able to know that you can find safety in safe situations and relationships, this can be transformative, because just because you are safe doesn't mean you feel safe. That's a trauma-informed perspective, is that, when it comes to anyone who has consistently been overwhelmed and stressed out in certain situations without the resources to cope, they develop coping mechanisms.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would love to explore ways to overcome these coping strategies together, and share how we can create that sense of safety in our bodies.
Well, give us a few tools then that we can use to, rewire these coping strategies or replace them with something that helps actually heal some of the chronic pain some of us struggle with.
Yeah, so I have a few tools that I provide to, like, clients and things like that, who struggle with people pleasing, hypersensitivity, any of these personality or coping mechanisms. So these tools would help increase self-awareness and lead to that sense of safety, and also make you feel strong, like you have a little bit of control. So the first one is the stop tool, and it's just as simple as like a 2-second, 4-second halting, pausing in a moment that you recognize. Maybe I recognize that I'm triggered. Maybe I feel the stress in my body. Maybe my heart rate. Maybe I just snapped at somebody and that's what got my attention. Whatever it is, stop. So the STOP. S is for stop. T, think. O, observe. P, pattern. Stop, think, observe your pattern. Like, what's happening with my
Yeah.
coping mechanisms or my behavior, or what is happening. Not that you have to get a ton of clarity, but you're just stopping for a second, recognizing I need to shift my attention for a second. And the second tool is a tool I developed. It's called a compass tool. And so like with every compass, you have a north, south, east, west, right? NSEW. And so N is for notice. And this is a lot about awareness of your system and your physical body. It's kind of like a body scan, but you're noticing what's going on in your body. The S, so south, I guess, sense what is being felt. So sometimes we describe things, whether it's describing a sensation of pain or the stress itself, but it could feel like cold, it could feel tight, it could feel tingling, heaviness, sharpness, you name it. Describing that and just letting yourself become aware of what is going on in your sensations. And then the E. So E is emotions. And that could just be, what am I feeling? You're asking yourself, am I feeling overwhelmed? Am I feeling weak, sad, ashamed, angry? What could I name that's an emotion? And then the last one, the W, so it's NSEW, is why. You're just asking why. Why did all this happen? And this really gets at the story, like the story work. Like, where did the patterns come from? What part of your story is this shame coming from? Is it, I've always felt like I need to be good, and in this situation I felt like I was wrong? Or I always felt like I needed to be strong, and in this situation I feel weak. That's the why.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the compass tool.
Yeah, I mean, those are helpful and kind of simple ways, I think, to think through that and then have a guide. So hearing all that and where our conversation's gone so far makes me think about the values we share in this podcast. Things like curiosity, contemplation, cultivation. How would cultivating the ordinary look in the world of chronic pain? Would you say that?
I mean, you could share your thoughts too, but the other three things that you mentioned, the curiosity is, it's not certainty. It's sort of this sense of having softness of mind, open thoughts, awareness, and then contemplative approaches to life is, I feel like, just really about tapping into your heart, meeting with the Holy Spirit, being just very aware of the presence of God. That's contemplative Christianity. I mean, it's a kind of deep understanding of the awareness and the incarnation of God's presence in your everyday. I mean, that cultivating the ordinary is, if I can be curious and I can sit in silence and stillness and solitude with myself and with the Lord, with others, that contemplative life begins to grow. And I think that these are ways that can reduce the stress that leads to more chronic pain.
Yeah.
And then I guess the last one that you mentioned was cultivation. It's about activity and action in a good, right direction. So it could be like rewriting story, or creating space in your life, margin, or just like new habits, new behaviors, new patterns that would be good for you.
Yeah. Well, we're kind of turning to the home stretch here on this conversation. We've talked about this before. You've talked about it on our podcast, but you developed this thing called PACE, and you're a coach, like a relationship coach. What is the PACE coaching model, and how can it help in maybe improving chronic pain issues?
Yeah, I mean, it's another acronym, PACE, pattern awareness, connection, and engagement. And it's sort of just it's like a map in my mind, and how I teach clients and stuff is, it's about pattern awareness is about your attention shifting. Maybe you've used the stop tool, you've recognized, okay, there's an issue here. You've done a body scan. You have some information about what's going on. You can calm dysregulation.
Mm-hmm.
But then the PACE program and the PACE tool is about that awareness, and then making certain connections between, am I activated or am I shut down, and then bringing in specific like resources that help you feel like yourself again, that help you feel calm, that help give you agency, and then the engaging. It's similar to the cultivation there. It looks like, what am I to do now? So
yeah. What about, do you have like a personal example of this process, or what it's looked like in your life using some of that stuff?
Yeah, using the PACE model in my own story as it relates to stress and chronic pain, I would share that, shame has been a constant most of my life. I think that there's a lot of reasons for that, but triggers for feeling not smart, or like I'm just not good enough, or maybe that I'm just too emotional or too much. It just leads to feeling like I'm just wrong, or I just feel misunderstood. So I'm aware of this pattern. Okay, that's the P and the A. And then the connections that I've made and that I continue to make in specific situations is, I feel wrong. I feel hypervigilant to others' perceptions of me. I am trying to self-protect. And then bringing in resources that calm the hypervigilance might be, for me, like, I mean, we've said this 1,000 times, but just deep breathing.
Yeah.
I love breath prayers, taking, a truth from God's word, or even just a phrase that I know is true that helps me feel calm and safe, and just repeating that as I breathe. That's a resource for me. And so awareness of the pattern, and then making those connections, and then the engagement for me looks like walking in worthiness, belovedness, understanding there's nothing missing. I'm whole. Like, I do not need to work. My system doesn't need to be in constant stress trying to protect myself. I am safe. And that type of engaging life is the work for me.
Yeah. Well, as we kind of here get to the end, what are some basic, really just kind of daily reminders for understanding kind of this mind-body syndrome and managing chronic pain? Ruling out that this is, from a doctor, that this isn't anything more acute or an illness, or.
Yeah, we said that before. If you've just experienced a onset of pain, it needs to be checked out by a doctor. But if you've had a chronic back pain for a while, or you've had knee pain, or you have these flares of types of pain that you've just been told you just have to manage it. Using some of these daily reminders, which have been adapted from Dr. John Sarno's book, Healing Back Pain. I just kind of put a little bit of my own language to it. So I'm just going to go through these like 10 quick reminders. So if you ever want to come back to this podcast, just come back to the end. And these reminders are super helpful. So number 1, the pain is due to mind-body syndrome. It's not structural. You're fine. You're normal. And 2, the direct reason for the pain is mild oxygen deprivation, which, like we mentioned, when you're in that chronic stress, it creates it's energy conservation mode, and you've had less blood flow and oxygen to certain parts of your body, which does create real pain. And so that is the source a lot of times of joint pain and just different things like that. So number 3, mind-body syndrome is a harmless condition caused by repressed emotions. Number 4, pain exists to distract my attention from my emotions. Number 5, since the body is healthy and normal, there's nothing to fear. Number 6, physical activity is not dangerous. It's important to move normally and without fear. Number 7, do not be concerned or intimidated by the pain. Number 8, shift attention from felt pain to your emotional concerns. Number 9, aim to be in control, not controlled by the subconscious mind. Number 10, think psychologically, not just physically. And so all this is it's a shift of your mindset and your attention.
Yeah. We'll link those or
we
have
can put that in the
in
description.
the show notes, so you don't have to listen and be trying to take notes. Although that's good too. So what might someone want to avoid when trying to overcome chronic pain patterns?
Yeah, I mean the 5 things that are all F words that you want to try to avoid if you're trying to heal from what you believe is mind-body syndrome, these chronic pain patterns. You want to avoid fear and recognize and acknowledge any fear surrounding the pain. Just don't let it control your actions.
When you say avoid fear of the pain of the not just fear in general.
Yes.
But you're talking about.
Right. Don't constantly be afraid that the pain's going to come back or it's going to get worse or any type of fear around the pain. You want to try to shift that. So your focus. I know it's really difficult when you're in pain to not pay attention to it, but just fixating on your pain makes it worse. So shift your focus away from the pain and onto positive and enjoyable activities. And then number 3, avoid that fixation. So it's focus, attention, and then your fixation on that. Let go of any frustration. Practice patience and avoid frustration when progress seems slow. So I think that's just another thing, is just being mad that you're in pain all the time. Makes the pain worse.
Right.
And then the last thing is just fighting against the pain or becoming overly resistant to it. I think that's a big word, is resistance, that I've heard from different professionals, is if you're constantly adapting and changing and trying to get ahead of this pain problem, your attention's always on it. And many of these things that we're trying to avoid, they kind of snowball on each other. They're all very closely linked. So it's all kind of part of the same thing, is that if your attention and fear and emotions and frustration is all wrapped up in your pain, remembering the pain is sort of just a symptom of deeper, maybe repressed emotions that you're not allowing yourself to feel, the pressure or the stress and, the things that are really going on deeper.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know this is a wealth, a lot of information, a lot of resources and stuff. What's a final message you'd like to leave our listeners with regarding chronic pain and the mind-body connection?
Yeah, I mean, chronic pain is not It's not a physical phenomenon. It's deeply intertwined with our emotions, experiences, and coping mechanisms. I think that by adopting this more integrated approach, we can begin to heal the source of our pain. We hope that this podcast has shed some light on this mind-body connection and just unpacked a little bit more of what was shared in the previous episode with myself and Danny about what happened for us and the hope. So yeah, I just hope that people can use some of these tools in their own life, and don't hesitate to seek support. Like we mentioned, we sought out a brain pain reprocessing therapist who helped us kind of walk through these steps. But part of what I do with clients is I just help them with the awareness piece and understanding their personality and coping mechanisms and stuff like that. So, I'd be happy to talk to anybody if this is something you want to understand more about.
Very cool. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to Understanding Chronic Pain and the Mind-Body Connection in this episode of Cultivate the Ordinary. Hope you're having a great day and continue having a good time, having curiosity and seeing God in the ordinary in the everyday of your life.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the podcast today. I hope you found something helpful, hopeful, or thought-provoking. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to any resources mentioned in the podcast. And we also have links in the notes for our own resources to check out. We would really love to hear from you. And we're also really grateful for your support by sharing the podcast episodes with your friends and family and leaving a rating and review. May we all regain and maintain our wonder, hope, and inspiration as we look at our ordinary through new and fresh eyes.